Hope this microphone has enough battery to last. I don't think this thing's been plugged in years. Had to dig this out of the TV console this morning, but we have this little microphone right now, so that's helpful. Welcome to Mostly Sports. I'm your host, Vince Petrone. It's not our first Mostly Sports. There is one other Mostly Sports, but this is the first one that we're going to run with. We're going to be proud of this one, and we're going to be consistent now. Did a couple test pods earlier in the winter, late fall, whatever you want to call it. Nothing really usable. We've been playing with the format. We've been getting back to doing rundowns, practicing. And we're here. We're back now. We're going to try to avoid news. We're going to try to avoid politics as much as possible. I know it's in everything. Business, politics, it's all melded together. Our world is a soup of misery at times. So we're going to try to avoid being part of that soup of misery and literally try to keep it to sports. There was a meme going around a while ago that was very popular. I don't know if it's a meme or not. Just an internet post, very popular, that said the internet should be for like three things: weather, stock tips, and sports. We're going to try to embrace that here on Mostly Sports. You can follow us on YouTube. That's where we're going to be predominantly for now. Until I get a podcasting, like a host site set up. I need to go through and do that. But yeah, we'll be on YouTube for now. YouTube, Instagram, we're all over the place. If you're on Instagram, give us a follow. It's Mostly Sports. Just forget the letter O. We couldn't get all of Mostly Sports for our Instagram account, so we just had to stick with. Is that all the vowels out of there except for the Y's? Sometimes Y is a vowel. We all know that. No, I don't think we did. But just forget the O's. Just forget the O's in it whenever you're looking us up. Too much to think about right now. So we're Mostly Sports on Instagram, minus the letter O's. You'll find us. And if you don't find us, we'll find you. All right. A great one for you today. Decent one for you today. We're going to do a Super Bowl roundup. Talk about what happened last night in New Orleans. Talk about the Chiefs' end of their dynasty, perhaps. Who knows? And then we get to go. We get to do a little bit of baseball talk today. Very excited. We love baseball here at Mostly Sports. It's without a doubt my favorite of the sports. And we got a lot to talk about coming off free agency and with like mere days to go before we have spring training. That's it. That's what the pod is planned to be. We're hoping to, again, keep it to Mostly Sports. I'm hoping to find us a co-host of sorts, someone to pop in the corner of the screen here to bounce off of. I don't personally love just talking myself. I know that's kind of sounds crazy for someone who is launching their own podcast that nobody asked for. But I don't love doing it alone. I don't love talking just to myself. So if I can find a co-host, or if someone out there is looking for a thing to do and you want to come be the co-host of Mostly Sports, shoot me a line. We'll get it set up. We'll get it together. Auditions are open, and we do need help. And you'll find that out as you listen today. Anyway, congratulate the Eagles and their fans. It's a rare occasion that we will give the Eagles, or really any team from the city of Philadelphia, any love on this program. Not in the blood. I am a Pittsburgher through and through. I moved here to New York after university. Been a Mets fan for a long time. Hate the Phillies. Hated the Phillies when I was a Pirates fan. Hate the Phillies more as a Mets fan. Always was that little cross-state rivalry when I was growing up in Pennsylvania. So no, I will not ever give that much credit to Philadelphia. But congratulations on beating the Chiefs last night. Fun game. But congratulations to them. Made minced meat of the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes. Congrats to Philly and the Eagles. I know it may not have been the closest Super Bowl we've watched. In fact, since 2021, the last time the Chiefs got blown out in a Super Bowl. Every other Super Bowl has been decided by a field goal, if you can believe that. Every Super Bowl we've had since 2020 nearly has only been a 3-point margin of victory. The Chiefs have been in most of those, but they did get blown out by the Buccaneers. And I think 2021, that was Tom Brady's last Super Bowl. He annihilated the Chiefs, which is kind of a pattern. The Chiefs either win these Super Bowls, or get absolutely blown out. Last night, it was the latter. They scored 22 points, the Chiefs did, but it wasn't like against the good part. It wasn't against the good players of the Eagles. At that point, they'd had their subs in the second half whenever they put up, I think 14 points at that point. I think they scored 6 points the whole first half of the game if they crossed midfield. Um, but yeah, it was pretty miserable to watch if you were a Chiefs fan, I'm sure. The Eagles had their way within last night. It was 345 yards of offense. I have some notes written down. 135 rushing yards. Saquon Barkley only had 57 of those. Jalen Hurts had 70 of those. They just didn't have an answer for Jalen Hurts last night. 70 plays by the Eagles. Chiefs only ran 49 plays. Dominated the time of possession, 37 minutes to 23 for the Chiefs. That's literally a whole other. The Eagles essentially kept the Chiefs from playing offense for a whole quarter. And you can't win a football game when you don't play offense for, one of the quarters. You have 4 quarters, you have to play offense in all 3 of them to win the game, especially whenever you're playing against the team that was playing as well as the Eagles were last night, especially on offense. Just everything was working. They didn't convert well on third down, either team. Both teams, I think, were 3 for 10 or 3 for 11 or something. It just seemed like when the Eagles were converting their third downs, they were converting their third downs for either touchdowns or plays that later on went on to be touchdowns, whereas the Chiefs just never had anything at any point going. 3 turnovers. That was the other big difference here. The Eagles did a lot, but they forced that. So I'll give the Eagles credit for this too. 3 turnovers by Pat Mahomes, 2 interceptions, and a fumble. We haven't seen that from Pat Mahomes, I don't think, ever. I didn't look it up. I should have looked up if Pat Mahomes had that kind of a stat line in a game before. But I am for sure he's never had a stat line for that in a Super Bowl. That was pretty abysmal. The first interception was kind of stupid because they were down. I think it was 3rd and 16. The Eagles were playing back. They were going to give them an easy completion. They weren't going to get a first down, but they were at least going to get an easy completion. And Mahomes kind of forced it. Something we don't usually see Pat Mahomes do is force the throws like he was forcing last night. And I think that's credit to the Eagles defense keeping the pressure on. And they weren't even doing it with the blitz. That's the other thing. If I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I'm saying to myself, how did our line, which was not anything to be proud of all season, but at least did a better job protecting Pat Mahomes than it did last night. How are the Eagles getting, 4 guys to Pat Mahomes without sending a blitz? And they were just obliterating that offensive line for the Eagles, just getting right through it. It was like they weren't even there on a couple of those. I think they had 6 sacks last night, the Eagles did, and on some of them it didn't look anything like the Chiefs were really putting their best foot forward to stop them. If I'm Pat Mahomes, that's my frustration today, is that we had, I'm sure there was a game plan coming in, and just something went wrong. We'll talk a little bit more about what went wrong here, but for now, let's stick with what went right for the Eagles. They got those turnovers on Mahomes. He didn't look right after the first one. He looked worse after the second one, and the fumble was really the nail in the Chiefs' coffin. But I mean, the real story, and you don't want Pat Mahomes to be the story coming out of the Super Bowl, because he gets to be the story coming out of every Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts is probably the real story. He had the most to lose. Bad last season. Had a lot to prove. Came out and he did. He put up, again, 70 rushing yards. Easily was the MVP. 221 yards passing. 40-plus yards receiving to 4 different receivers. He used everybody. Touchdowns by A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. He put one in himself. The stars for the Eagles showed up, whereas the stars for the Chiefs just did not. If you're an Eagles fan, that had to be a lot of fun to watch. I think that last night there were a lot more Eagles fans than your average Sunday. I reckon a lot of folks really enjoyed that Super Bowl despite that score. The Eagles were exciting to watch, and it wasn't a game really at any point. As much as the Eagles did right to win that game, I would say that the Chiefs probably did as much early on in the week, though, to lose that game early on. And I wouldn't normally say that, but we had a really good clip this week from Travis Kelce, of course. He was asked during media day if you could ask the press or ask the media one question, what would it be? And he responded with this.
You guys leaning into this whole ref thing
tells me that he's thinking about that and caring about that so much, or that they're, Why is the media doing this to us? They let the noise in this week. Somewhere over the past 2 weeks, over the past month, too much of the noise got in to the Chiefs locker room. And that ended up being, I would say, the defining factor for their season was that there was a lot of noise all season about if the Chiefs were actually good enough to be where they were, or if it was all just help from the officials, help from the league. You know, does the NFL want Taylor Swift there? Is pulling that media group everything that this has been for? The conspiracy theories left and right was all there all season long. So far as we know, it hadn't gotten into the locker room. It hadn't affected the way they were playing until yesterday. It clearly affected the way they played yesterday and prepared for the week, because that was a team that looked like they were trying to prove something that they probably didn't really have to prove, because they are still, two-time reigning Super Bowl champions going for a three-peat. I'm pretty sure they're three-time. Pat Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls, I think, at this point. Travis Kelce has won 3 Super Bowls at this point. They're still some of the winningest NFL players of all time, some of the most successful NFL players of all time. So to worry about what the media and the fans are saying, it's the small potatoes that they talk about not being able to let in when you're trying to defend titles and defend championships and defend legacies. Because now we're sitting here and everyone, on the TV this morning and online is talking about, well, is Pat Mahomes really that good? When we know Pat Mahomes is really that good. Pat Mahomes is a very good quarterback. The worst thing that can happen for Pat Mahomes now is that the Chiefs never get back to a Super Bowl. There's a ton more pressure on Pat Mahomes now to get back to a Super Bowl, because if he doesn't, then his legacy is average quarterback in Super Bowls. I think I saw he's thrown 7 interceptions to 10 touchdowns in Super Bowls, which means he hasn't been the reason they've won those games. Whereas if you look at Tom Brady, every Super Bowl he lost with the ball in his hand. At least he lost 3-point margin on most of them, where Pat Mahomes has gotten blown out in the 2 he's lost. And the 2 he's lost now. One of those being to Tom Brady, who really enjoyed last night. You could tell when he was doing commentary that he was really, really enjoying knowing that he doesn't have to worry about that three-peat and the GOAT conversation too badly. At least not for a little bit. At least not till, I don't know, 2 more seasons till Mahomes gets another chance at a three-peat. But yeah, the worst thing that can happen is that the Chiefs don't get back to a Super Bowl with Pat Mahomes in the next 2 seasons. If that happens and they start getting talked about the way people talk about the Bills not being able to get past the Chiefs, or the Ravens not being able to get past the Chiefs, if they become the team that can't get past the Bills and can't get past the Ravens, that's whenever Pat Mahomes needs to start worrying about his legacy. That's whenever, and he doesn't even need to do that. It's up to him if he decides to worry about that. But that's when the real conversation with that will come in, because he is still, as of right now, the best quarterback of this group of quarterbacks that we've had since Brady left the league. And you can even argue Brady's last couple of seasons when he wasn't like prime Tom Brady, when he was in Tampa Bay. And, he was still pretty good in Tampa Bay. So we shouldn't say he was bad in Tampa, but he wasn't, the New England Patriots Tom Brady that we had. But they just never had anything going, the Chiefs. I think their best player last night was Xavier Worthy. I think he was the only one who really got anything going. There was a chance at one point. I think DeAndre Hopkins they said it was a go-ahead touchdown if he caught that ball. Who knows? But yeah, there was just moments where the Chiefs didn't show up. And if you're not going to show up for your legacy game, which is what people were saying, go for the three-peat. The team's going for the three-peat, and everyone was talking about, how much money they're going to have to pay for using the term three-peat. You got to show up, and they didn't show up. And they let the outside noise in very clearly, because Kelce wouldn't have cared about bringing that up to the media. Sounds like they thought that their accomplishments had been dwarfed. Whenever, that's up to you to decide. Fans and the media are going to talk and say what we want to say, because that's how it works. When you're the one being talked about, it's up to you to step up and show that you can be that team in the face of all that noise. And they weren't able to get by. You look at the officiating last night, and I'd say the officiating was pretty even. In fact, penalties stacked out I think the Chiefs had 7 penalties, the Eagles had 8 penalties. And it didn't come into play. Didn't come into play at all. So that's it. That's the Super Bowl. That's the NFL season. Who'd have thought that the NFL season, and I'm a Steelers fan. So if you'd have told me that the NFL season was going to end with the ball in Kenny Pickett's hands taking a knee to win the Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles, I wouldn't have believed it. There's not a chance in the world that I would have believed that to be the outcome of this NFL season. But there we were last night watching Kenny Pickett kneel down the final seconds of the Super Bowl. And now Kenny Pickett has his Super Bowl. The Steelers continue their quest for a playoff victory. And the world continues on. And we get to talk about baseball now, which is really exciting. So we have a lot to talk about with on to baseball. So we love baseball here at Mostly Sports. I think I mentioned at the top of the pod that it is my favorite sport. There's a reason I waited until today to get this thing really rolling. I was torn on this. I was either going to make this just be a baseball podcast. I was really, really, really thinking about being a super niche baseball podcast, and that's what we're going to morph into. I do not doubt that over the course of spring and summer, this is going to become very baseball heavy. We'll mix in some college football once college football starts picking up here in the spring. We'll mix in some NFL talk whenever free agency gets going. Obviously, go Knicks. We love the NBA around here. The Luka trade shook the house to its core. We're really excited. He's going to debut tonight with the Lakers, hopefully. That's something, we'll sidebar here, a little off topic, off rundown. I really hope the NBA figures out this playing time thing. The players can do what they want. But I hope there's more cognizance toward the fans in the stands and the people watching on TV at some point here, or we change the way contracts are done. There was no reason for Luka and LeBron to have not played the Lakers game. I think it was on Friday night. Maybe it was Saturday. I think it was Friday. They just sat, and neither of them are hurt. They're both there to play. You're there to play ball. Play ball. Same with Joel Embiid in Philly. You're there to play ball. Please come play ball. We want to see you guys play basketball. You're some of the best athletes in the world, if not the best athletes in the world. Luka Doncic, literally the best basketball player in the world, they say. At least top 5, And people pay hundreds of dollars to go to these games. Hundreds of dollars. I'm not a big, don't do it for the kids guy, because I don't really care. But there are kids there. There are kids that look up to these people and idolize these people, and their family sacrificed, some of them. And I know there's a lot of rich people out there that don't have to sacrifice and can just say, "Oh, NBA tickets $250 tonight, let's go." That's not true for everybody. All right, that's not true for the entire land. It's not true for I reckon 90% of Americans can't afford an NBA ticket right now. I would bet even more than that can't afford an NBA ticket comfortably. Comfortably, I'll say. Without having to sacrifice a meal or a few meals or pick up a shift or figure out how they're going to put their rent together. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be with affording to go to these events. So I do think that there is some level of expectation that fans can have that the best product is going to be on the floor. And if you can have a reason, if you can say, okay, we're going to sit LeBron tonight and LeBron has an injury, I'm not going to question that injury. If you're going to sit Luka and say, Luka's hurt, I'm not questioning it. But if they're just sitting and it's for rest, I don't love it. Unfortunately, I don't love it. And that might be my old man take for the day, but I do not love that the NBA just lets the players sit like that. I get load management. I know they do it in baseball too. Mark Teixeira famously sat for tired legs for about 3 weeks back in 2015, 2014, I think it was maybe, but who could forget tired legs for Mark Teixeira? It's not unheard of to happen across sports. I know that. I know teams across the sports landscape take dives and work to get better draft picks, and I know competitive balance isn't what it used to be. Okay, I'm not naive to that, but the players should play, especially if they're home. If you're the home team You owe it to your fans to get out there. Play a quarter, play a possession. Go sit down after that. Get a little work in. Treat it, don't even go full intensity. Just be out there for the kids. Half of them aren't even going to recognize the intensity level. They're just happy to see you out there trying. And then, yeah, that's my soapbox for the day. That's my soapbox for the day. We'll move on to baseball now because that's what we're really excited to talk about. Um, Again, baseball is my favorite. Uh, got a good relationship with baseball. Lifelong fan of the sport. I think it was probably the first sport I learned. It's definitely the first sport I went to. My dad, big Pirates fan, or big baseball fan just generally. My dad actually was a Mets fan, which is how I ended up being a Mets fan. We have almost reverse paths in our fanhood. So my dad became a Mets fan whenever the Mets became a team back in the 60s. Big Gil Hodges guy, huge Gil Hodges guy. And he became a Mets fan. Root for the Mets all the way up until he had the kids. Him and my mom were out for dinner the night of the 86 game 6. Because of that dinner date, I now have a VHS recording of the 1986 game 6 sitting over here on one of my shelves. Incredible piece of sports memorabilia to have. We're talking authentic game highlights because my dad recorded it because he was, again, out on a date with my mom. I think it was a date. I don't think it was an anniversary thing. I'm pretty sure it was a date. But yeah, we have that recorded. We have Game 7 from the Astros, the NLCS Game 7, where they went and they destroyed that plane afterward. We got it. We got it here on VHS. I used to watch that Game 6 every year when I still had a VHS player growing up. I would put that thing in every year, and I would watch that. And that was how the ball would go through Buckner's legs, and baseball season was here, man. That was how I kicked it off. So that's how did it actually happen? So my dad was a Mets fan. We were born. He became a Pirates fan, so that he was always a Pirates fan. Grew up in Pittsburgh, loved those Pirates teams. My dad just a baseball fan, loved the Pirates still then, but he made sure that we were Pirates fans. He made sure that we had a team that we were rooting for locally, that we could keep up with and watch and have something as a family to share together. And it was awesome. I love those Pirate fans years, and I'm still a Buccos fan. Still have my casual rooting interest for the Buccos. I hope Nutting sells that team. He doesn't deserve them. He doesn't deserve the city of Pittsburgh's love. Has no right to it. That son of a gun. Hope he moves his ass to Salt Lake City, and we just don't have to worry about him someday. Um, Fuck Bob Nutting, man. Ruin that team. Most beautiful ballpark in baseball. Most beautiful stadium in baseball. Some of the most dedicated fans in baseball have been through more shit than any fan base should have to be through in baseball. And they carry on and they show up, but the owner doesn't give a shit. I hate him. I hate Bob Nutting. Doesn't deserve that team. Anyway, so my dad grew up Mets fan, became a Pirates fan for us. I grew up a Pirates fan until I was about 13 or 14. However old I was whenever they parted ways with Jason Bay. That was my final straw. He had just won Rookie of the Year. I said, this is the guy they're going to build around. This is the team. This is the team, It wasn't. He was gone. I was gone. I went and I started looking around. I think it was around the same time the Mets were in the NLCS. This might be 2006, 2007 then. Because I do recall going into what was then my sister's room. All right, it was my sister's room across the hall from me. I'm watching TV. In the spare room downstairs. Don't need the layout of my house. You don't need to know what my childhood home looked like. That's not for you to know. Go across. I find this old box. It's got a couple old sweatshirts in it. I think this T-shirt was probably in that box at one point. It had a couple old shirts from my high school. I went to Du Bois Central Catholic. Shout out to the Cardinals. Shout out to that Catholic school education for 12 years. Anyway, a lot of great old memorabilia in that box. But then at the bottom, Mets hats, Mets t-shirts, Mets sweatshirts, things I didn't know about my dad. I did not know my dad was actually a Mets fan until I found that box of stuff, and then I had to go ask him. I said, Dad, you were a Mets fan at one point, and then he told me about Gil Hodges and how he loved Rusty Staub and Keith Hernandez and all those guys in the '86 team. Dykstra told me all about them. It's like shit. I can be a Mets fan now then. And from that day on, I started following the Mets on MLB.com religiously. I would sit in Mrs. Cholok's biology class, sorry, Mrs. C, and I would look at baseball stats all the time, keeping up with my Mets during spring training. I would have the broadcast on, watching those little dots go around on the screen. Didn't matter what class I was in. If we had the language lab or the Chromebook cart, we had this little Chromebook cart at my school. I was MLB.com all day back there, man. I was hoping to God Josh Tolley made the roster. Living was different then, man. Living was different. Better times. Um, but, we're back. We have spring training, I think, a week away for some teams. I know, like I said, I know a lot of players have reported already. Lindor's already there. Clay Holmes is already there for the Mets. The pitchers and catchers are there in some places. So let's dive on in here. We got to go first to the Dodgers. I fucking hate the Dodgers, but we got to start with the Dodgers. They are the reigning champs, so to speak. They are. They won. They won fair and square. Beat those Yankees. Um, Bummer of a way for it to go for the Yankees. I am not a Yankee fan by any stretch. Um, I've got a lot of friends that are Yankee fans. Shout out to Lou. Shout out to Brandon. Shout out to those just the first two I can think of, but there's countless out there that I know. Shout out to my New Yorkers. Heartbreaking way for that to go. Luis Castillo. Look it up. Look up Luis Castillo and see what the first highlight for Luis Castillo is. I don't know if it will be this, but once you find what I'm talking about, you'll see why I'm talking about Luis Castillo in this situation. Um, just tough. But that's baseball. That's how it goes. Fundamentals wins the game. If you want to win baseball games, you got to play fundamental ball. And the Yankees just lapsed on fundamentals last year when it really, really counted. Not covering first, dropping the pop up, not getting the ball in fast. Compound mistakes. It happens. But that's also why we love baseball. Baseball is a very cause and effect sport. There aren't many sports that you watch where you can directly link an error to something else. You can do it in football, like we got to last night with Pat Mahomes through the interception. It led to points. You don't cover first base, it leads to a big inning. Stuff like that. I love cause and effect. I love, love, love cause and effect. That is what I think draws part of me to the game of baseball is that cause and effect of it. Is one thing will lead to another inevitably. People say it's not action packed. You're a moron. You're a fool. You're GD fool. All right, go to heck. Just talk about the Dodgers though before I get ranting about the beauty of the great game. The Dodgers got better, if you can believe it. The Dodgers found a way to get better. They already have the best player in the world, Shohei Ohtani. Got Roki Saki. I'm sure I didn't say the name right. I know. They got Yamamoto. They have this Japanese talent pipeline they've built out where they get the best Japanese pitching talent, best Japanese two-way talent, and it makes it hard to keep up with because the international game is catching up and it's good over there. They know how to play baseball in the Asian countries. So everywhere now. The Americans are falling behind across the board, and that means baseball too, unfortunately. Math, science, baseball. We're trailing in all three. All right, pick it up. All right, so the Dodgers got better. They're trying to be the best. They're the first team to defend a World Series. Well, not the first team to defend a World Series. It happens every year. But they're trying to be the first team to win back-to-back World Series since the 1998-2000 Yankees, who actually won 3 in a row. Hasn't happened in baseball since then, which is kind of interesting to think about, the kind of league parity they've had. But they do say baseball is the hardest sport to win your championship in because of the unpredictable nature of it. You can have the best team on paper, you can have the best, highest salaries, but it doesn't matter because baseball is very unpredictable. Baseball is a different sport. For the most part, the analytics do come out on top. I'll give the analytics its credit. But there is still a lot of unknown to baseball and little moments in baseball games that kind of take out the whole formulaic side of building a roster. That being said, what the Dodgers have done, they didn't need to do a ton to their lineup. They have a good lineup: Mookie Betts, Teoscar Hernandez, um, Max Muncy, Gavin Lux, Freddie GD Freeman. They got a good lineup. The lineup isn't the problem, was never the problem. The pitching wasn't a problem last year, and it's definitely not going to be a problem this year. No one in their pitching rotation right now. Tyler Glasnow down the line. Not one person pitched to above a 3 ERA last year. And they just keep adding. And it's hard to keep up. I don't mean to complain because we're going to make fun of Hal Steinbrenner for that later on, and I can't complain as a Mets fan. We're keeping up perfectly fine. I mean competitively at this point, because the Mets, like I said, we can't complain right now. Mets fans can't complain. We got Juan Soto. We paid out the ass for Juan Soto, but we knew we were going to pay out the ass for Juan Soto, and we've wanted Juan Soto for so long. I think we've been talking about Juan Soto coming over to the Mets via trades or free agency since his last year in DC. I think he posted a picture of himself in front of the Apple, and people are like, "Oh, that dude's coming! That dude's coming!" And he's finally here. Granted, we're paying a ton for him. I think close to $1 billion over the next 15 seasons for the guy. But it's not my money; it's Steve's money, and Steve has money, so we don't got to worry about it. That's why the Pete Alonso situation is so interesting. So the Mets, like I said, had the free agency they wanted. They went out and they got Jose Siri, not a huge fish, but a good piece of the lineup. Low OBP guy, 272. Brought back Jesse Winker, clubhouse guy, team dirtbag. My wife calls him the team dirtbag. Every team needs a team dirtbag. Ours is Jesse Winker. He's back. We're talking, I think, a 360 OPS last season. Or OBP. Excuse me. OBP. Did I do OBP for all these guys? Anyway, we got to stick on the Dodgers. I'm getting off topic here because we got to talk about Ohtani. So the only thing that's a question mark for the Dodgers, which is why the Dodgers are so goddamn spoiled, is whether or not they can have the best player in the world also pitch and pitch effectively and pitch like to value, if that makes sense, which is an incredible problem to have. So when I say pitch to value, what I mean is, yes, he himself also, if you plug Shohei Ohtani into that starting rotation right now, you say he's the sixth arm in that rotation, there's still not a person in that rotation who has pitched to above a 3 ERA in a couple of seasons. Unprecedented stuff. But injuries are way more possible to pitchers. All right, there's more movement, repetitive motion. The risk of being in the middle of the field 24. I know getting hit by a ball is not any player's biggest fear, but the wear and tear on a pitcher routinely stacks up on those elbows, stacks up on those thumbs, stacks up on those fingers. Calluses, little things happen all the time to pitchers that cause them to miss week, 2 weeks. And granted, we haven't had a situation where a guy missed week, 2 weeks as a two-way player, really since Baby Ruth back in the day, If I'm the Dodgers, I am saying this guy hit a 390 OPS last year. He hit 390 last season. His OPS was 136 or 1.036, above 1. Incredible. Means he was mostly on base. Stole 59 bases, hit 54 home runs. You don't want to lose that kind of offense in your lineup because he hurt himself pitching in what could have been a loss. I would say that the value of offense always outweighs the value of pitching. I only say that because, again, I had to watch Jake DeGrom lose so many games he should have won. You can have a pitcher's duel go 7, 8 innings. It doesn't matter what happens during those 5 innings, 6 innings, 7 innings, if the starting pitcher is lights out, if nobody scores runs. And then if that pitcher leaves, the bullpen comes in, and then they start giving up the runs to the other team. Cause and effect, cause and effect. I would say that if I have Shohei Ohtani, who has proven himself to be a prolific piece of offense, a prolific bat in a lineup, you don't risk losing that day to day for a spot start, for 3 innings, for 2. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I know he has a good ERA. I know he has talent as a pitcher. I know he came over here as a two-way product because of how competent of an athlete he is, how he can pitch and how he can hit. Uh, there is a day coming where you can't be a baseball player if you can't pitch and hit. Like that day is coming, and that day is coming soon, I'm sure. But if I'm the Dodgers and I have those weapons already, I have Blake Snell, I have Tyler Glass now, I have Yamamoto, I have Sasaki, I have what else do I have there? I had another name written down here. I have 5 guys in my starting rotation aside from Shohei Ohtani who can pitch to a 3 or below ERA. It's not worth plugging in Ohtani for 3 innings at any point. At any point, because you're risking that injury, and you're risking. Who knows what happens? He could hurt his leg pitching, be out for the season. He could throw his elbow out for the season. You can DH a guy, and he can hit. You want your DH to be fully healthy. You want your best star, your best player. You want the world's best player to be healthy so he can be the most effective on your team. And I think putting a guy out there to pitch whenever you don't need him to pitch is just unnecessary risk. If I'm the Dodgers, I'm trying to defend a World Series, I want Shohei in my lineup more than I want him on the mound. Consistently. Just consistently. That's me. And, the only team that they're really, I shouldn't say the only team, because baseball is baseball, like we said, but the team that they're going to have to contend with, I don't want to jinx them. On paper, the Mets are the second best team in the National League, at least in terms of their lineup. They have Pete Alonso now. They have Franklin Dorr. They have Brandon Nimmo. They have Juan Soto. They have Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez. That's like 6 guys right there that could hit 25, 30 home runs, if they're locked in and having as good a season as they're all capable of having. Pete Alonso had a down season last year. People have to remember that. If Pete Alonso has as good a season as he's capable of having, and if he has that season this season, the problems with the Mets pitching can go away. If you have 6 guys in your lineup that have that kind of pop, and then below them are guys with above average OPSs or on base percentages, OBPs, I should say. Talking, 3 and up. Not great, but we'll take it. Streaky. Francisco Alvarez is streaky. Jesse Winker, streaky. Jose Siri, not exactly a prolific offensive piece. Jeff McNeil, unpredictable. If those guys on the bottom of the lineup are at least getting on base consistently, and the top of the lineup is scoring those runs how it's, hopefully designed to be doing it, bottom to top, like they had success doing last year during that playoff run, this team doesn't need to worry about how suspect their starting pitching and bullpen still kind of are. Sean Manaea, if he pitches, deliberate, hard, works on that arm angle and focuses on it all season like he did the second half of last season when the Mets were trying to get into the playoffs and he locked it in. That's a guy who doesn't have Cy Young potential, but he's second tier. He's a great second tier, maybe all-star caliber pitcher. Kodai Senga, same thing. Healthy season of Kodai Senga. Peterson can stay consistent, which we've never seen, but if he can and he can stay below, he pitched with 2.9 last season. That's never happened for him, at least. Frankie Montez, another question mark. There's good, but it's not proven routinely. So if these guys can prove to be routinely good, the Mets are going to be able to contend with the Dodgers. Where I have my pause is saying that they can contend with the Dodgers is on that pitching. I know I just said I think offense is more valuable than pitching. I think in a 7-game scenario, if the Mets run into Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, and Yamamoto, back to back to back, and they're in a slump at that point in the season, it's going to be hard to beat them. It's going to be it'll be a good series, but it'll still be hard to beat them. So we'll see what the trade deadline can bring to the Mets if they're still competitive around then. Um, but you got to be happy if you're a Mets fan right now because they've definitely, you know, they last season they beat the Braves when they needed to beat the Braves. They leapt into the playoffs by beating the Braves. They vanquished that. They came back and they beat the Brewers when they shouldn't have beat the Brewers. Uh, fought, fought off the Phillies. The Phillies were a good team too. I don't think the Phillies should be ignored still. The Phillies are still a quality bunch there. It's just that bullpen's never there for Philly either. It just seems like the Dodgers are coming in as the favorite to spring training, which is fine. I wouldn't say the Yankees got any better. They added Cody Bellinger, who I love, but I don't know if Cody Bellinger is really like a talent. I don't know if he's obviously a talent. He's obviously a better ball player than I am because he's playing and I'm not. But I don't know if he doesn't transform the lineup the way Juan Soto does. Neither does Paul Goldschmidt. Goldschmidt, routinely MVP caliber player, doesn't change the caliber of that lineup. I think it's a detracted lineup without Soto. Lose Soto, you lose Rizzo. You got to build something back there. And I don't think the Yankees have done enough to beat the Dodgers if they were to play the Dodgers again in the World Series, or even enough to beat the Mets if they were playing the Mets in the World Series. But I do believe they've probably done enough to make it back to the World Series, strictly because no one else in the American League has done anything. It feels like the American League is just kind of waiting for its players to develop, building from within, whereas a lot of these NL teams do seem to spend a little bit more. You look at what the Orioles did, look at how the Blue Jays have done it, what the Red Sox are trying to do. It's kind of following the Tampa Bay model more. And that might be because, profitability is down, guys. Profitability for the league is down. It's down across most sports, I'm sure. So these teams start trying to find ways to build cheaper. I'm sure someday that will be more of the regular, where we have these teams building from their minor league systems. And the Mets have tried that. The Dodgers have tried that. And there's a hybrid model that you can go with, that you keep a good model on the field while building up your minor league system. And, it's a business now. It's always been a business, but it feels like growing that talent is much more of an American League thing right now, as opposed to spending your way into the situation. But that being said, Mark Vientos, Brett Batty, Acuna Jr. we didn't really develop, but he's ours now too. Ronnie Mauricio. The Mets have they got bench, they got depth. Something the Yankees can't say. Something I'm not sure the Dodgers can necessarily say right now. So we'll see. We still got a long time to go till November. But it'll be a lot of fun. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I am really longing for it this year. We'll wrap things up here. Really longing for baseball season this year. Not just because the Mets were so much fun at the end of last season, but really just because this is the first winter in New York where it's been truly winter in a few years. We've had very dry winters, not a ton of snow on the ground, chilly, but not like crazy or anything. This winter has sucked. I'm a big cyclist now. I ride my bike as much as I can. Hasn't been as much fun this winter, I will say. I used to ride to work every day, so I had to ride. Now it's kind of like if I don't have to, I don't. And I miss riding every day. I would like to get back to riding every day, and I can't wait for the weather to break so I can be riding every day again. I guess that's a great spot to do this. So I'm a cyclist. My brother's a cyclist. Our dad was very sick with MS his entire life till he passed away in 2000, 2022, I guess, 2023. Passed away. A lot of complications, but he had MS his whole life. So me and my brother are doing Bike MS Escape to the Lake. We're raising some funds along with that. It's a 140-mile bike ride from Portersville, PA, up to Lake Erie. We'll be doing that in June here, and our team has a $5,000 fundraising goal. If you're listening to this podcast and you can throw us a couple bones, I'll get links in bios. Look for us. It's Bernie Sun Cycle Club. We're on the Bike MS donation page. You can find us there. But yeah, that's pretty much what the mission is now. Is just to end MS in the world and make this podcast something. So thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed it, give us a follow, a subscribe, like, whatever you want to do. Just do it for us. Share us. If you can donate some funds to the bike charity, that's great too. Like and subscribe. I guess that's what they say. Check us out. Tell your friends. Thanks for tuning in.